Okay, so um, when I left off, I was telling you all about the apparition of my cousin at my grandmother's house that was not my cousin, that was trying to get me to follow him. And I don't know if I got to the floating head in the car, but I think that I did. Um, so I want to tell you all about the effects that it had on me, the sleep paralysis. It was so bad and so scary, so terrifying, and this happened to me. This started when I was a child, and it continued to happen to me for decades. Amongst other supernatural stuff that had occurred, and I'll talk more about that. But right now, I want to touch on this sleep paralysis stuff. Listen, I had began to seclude myself as a child, as a teenager. By this time, I'm like maybe 14, 15 years old. Um, I had began to seclude myself. I would sit in the closet and read books all day, um, in the dark with a flashlight. I would lock myself in my room and just dive into whatever world that was going on in the book that I was reading. Um, the sleep paralysis was terrible. Hold on one second. Okay, I'm back, you guys. In the beginning, I was just starting my work day, and I had to cut that short because I had work to do. But to go back to where I think I begun, um, for years, for years and years, for decades throughout my childhood and my adulthood. I'm 41 years old now. Um, I suffered from sleep paralysis, and when I was a teenager, it started when I was a teenager. Now there were things that happened when I was like 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, with me, that had begun to like darken a part of me, because the things that I had experienced with my daddy, and his physical abuse, it had begun to affect me mentally and spiritually, and I think that also, like I said, that also opened up those doors. And so I just began to seclude myself. I was the oldest sibling. I have a younger sister, younger brother. As I said, he's deceased. So I was the oldest child, okay? And I was so very protective of my siblings that I never wanted to involve them by going to sleep in their beds, besides that one time with the clothes, or like talking to my sister about what I was going through, because she's like 4 years younger than me. So I had this protective spirit when it came to them, and so I took on everything myself. And so when I was going through those sleep paralysis stages, I can remember how I don't have that anymore, but I can remember how it would begin. It would always happen when I was very, very sleepy. When I was very sleepy, and I felt like I was going to sleep hard and long, and it was going to be harder for me to wake up. That's when it attacked. I would hear this whooshing sound like a train or like a helicopter or something. Um, I would hear that sound, and then my eyes would get heavy, but and my body would get stiff, and I couldn't move, and I would see things. I saw like apparitions of people who I knew. I would see my daddy. I would see my my uncle, my cousins. I would see people. I would see my sister. But it wasn't them, and they would always be like distorted. Um, Thinking about it just really screws me up. I'm sorry, but anyway, so I would seclude myself. I would seclude myself from everybody. I would lock myself in a closet with a flashlight, and I would read a book, and I would just dive into whatever world that the book was talking about. Whatever was going on to the book, I would like imagine myself in that world in order to escape my reality. And so, as a child and even as an adult, I've read hundreds of books. So let's fast forward. I'm 17 years old at this point, 17, 18. Meet my husband when we were teenagers. I was 18, he was 19 when we got married. But we had met when we were like 16 and 17. We had our first child. He, in the beginning, he was always the type of person who defended women and children. If we were out in public and a man was with his girlfriend or his wife and he was mistreating her, or he was talking to her loudly and badly, or even if there's even been a time when my husband jumped on a man because he was beating up his girlfriend, like out in the public at a store or something, right? And he was always very protective of me and defensive of me when we had first gotten together. Now, as time went on, because he had his demons from his childhood, that's not my story to tell, but he had been through things in his childhood which forced him to grow up super fast. He had to take care of himself at a young age. And I feel like, and he was always more advanced than me. And I feel like that he had, or doors had already been opened up within him that, that cracks, like a window cracked within him or a door cracked within him that allowed darkness to seep in. And eventually, he and I had got to a point where he was physically abusing me in some of the worst ways. And it didn't start off terrible. It started off with an argument between a girlfriend and a boyfriend, or rather a fiance and fiance. And then it gradually at first started to become bad, and then it became horrible. But his eyes, if you knew my husband, his eyes is like this shade of brown. It's like a milky chocolate brown. And when he would turn into that abusive person who he had become, his eyes would turn cold black. It was like he was manifesting a demon. And at the time, I still didn't know much about the spiritual world. At the time, I still didn't know that the things that was happening to me in my sleep was sleep paralysis. I still didn't know that the knocking that I was hearing on the walls in sets of threes was demonic. I still didn't know that the scratches on my back, 3 scratch marks down my back or all over my back and my body, I didn't know that was demonic at the time. This video is about to run out. I'm gonna have to make another part. But man,